Me wearing my flannel like this should upset you, like when a child puts their hands in their shirt like this and stretches it all out weird and they don't have a parent to tell them to put their hands through their coat the right way, otherwise they're gonna ruin their clothes. Listen, asymmetrical stuff is a little bit weird and it's a little bit wonky. And when you look at a circle, which would be what most of the aftermarket wheels are shaped after, you would typically see that there'd be some sense of symmetry. I have in front of me a wheel from Volk. This wheel is probably the weirdest one that we've unboxed over here at Martini Works Unboxed, and I'm very, very excited to share it with you because it may be one of the weirder ones, but it is also, in my opinion, probably one of the coolest wheels that Volk Racing has ever come out with. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Martini Works Unboxed. If you haven't yet, please be sure to subscribe so that we can keep making good product reviews on the things that you're picking up from martiniworks.com. If you're looking for wheels, tires, performance parts, suspension, wheel and tire packages shipped to your door, we do it all at martiniworks.com. We're a shop up here in Appleton, Wisconsin. Just a bunch of homies that love to help people mod their car the right way. Not a huge conglomerate. We're just looking for people to get the right parts. And there probably is no better way to start with an Audi RS5, which is what this is going on, than with some Volk Racing wheels. These are 19 by 9.5 plus 25. We're looking at a 5 lug. These only come in an 18-inch diameter or a 19-inch diameter. And what that means for you is that you are not getting a deal. No part of these wheels are going to be a deal for you. They never are. They never will be. They're $1 billion, and you are paying for that. But I think it'll be worth it, especially if you are looking to get something that isn't your typical TE37. Your 18-inch wheels are probably gonna cost you right around $3,800 for a set of 4, and your 19-inch are gonna cost you right around $4,300 for a set of 4. Now here at Martini Works Unboxed, we are always showing you the actual unbox process so that you know exactly what you're getting. With Volk Racing, I usually give them a little bit of a hard time because their packaging is okay. And for $4,300, I kind of sort of wish the actual engineer from Volk Racing would drop off the wheels for me for that price. Unfortunately, they don't. You do get the 4 cardboard L brackets or whatever it is that you want to call it, little protectors, so that the wheel doesn't shake too much on the inside of the wheel. You get very thin top layered cover made out of cardboard. And of course, the very first thing that you are going to see is some very great stuff about Ray's warranty policy. Now, the NE24 is a new wheel from Ray's. Generally speaking, we're going into 2025. I think it was released right about 4 years ago, but it still really hasn't gotten into the market very strongly. And the reason for that is because it's just a wheel that not a lot of people consider picking up when they are going to spend this amount of money. What does the name mean? NE24. So N stands for Group N Racing, and Group N Racing is your more factory, street-specific style vehicle builds. You're gonna see a lot of Nissans and Toyotas in that space. The E stands for Evolution, very similar to the TE. And then the 24 stands for the spoke design layout, essentially 2 legs, 4 sets. What you're gonna see is that this wheel does not come with center caps. And if you're looking to get center caps, you can get them from martiniworks.com. I hate to say how much they cost. Surprisingly enough, ladies and gentlemen, we don't make the rules on what those sell for. They have what's called an MAP, or a minimally advertised price. So the center caps that we're gonna show you are the low price of $280 for a set of 4. So if you want this whole setup, you're probably paying right around $4,500 to $4,600. With that being said, let's take a look at what this wheel actually looks like. Boom! I'm sorry, I hate to do it to you. Let me do it one more time. That's not fair. It's not fair to you guys. It's like a Gaussian blur. It's like one of those weird dreams where you can't run. Oh, it's such a good looking wheel. Such a good looking wheel. Now, because it is Volk Racing, it is a forged monoblock. So it's cut out of a single piece, forged to perfection. And this is what that perfection looks like. This is a absolutely stunning wheel. This is gorgeous. One of the things that always kind of reminds me with this wheel is like this idea around some of the upper class style wheels that come straight from the factory. If you get a Pro Spec Nissan, for instance, you get forged 19s. When you go with the final edition of the Toyota Supra, they slap some fancy wheels from Japan on it as well. And I think the NE24 is very much an OE++ style design. It is an incredibly good looking wheel, but it doesn't look so far out of place that you wouldn't slap this on a Supra, and to the unknowing eye, people might actually just think it's the wheel that came with the car. That's not meant as a sign of disrespect. That is meant as this is for somebody who understands that you don't need to have the biggest and brightest aftermarket wheels to make a statement. Now you're gonna see that 24 kind of come out with these spokes, essentially 1, 2, 3, 4, the 2 here, and that is your 2 and 4. The Volk Racing is hiding behind what I would almost call like a shadow lip design. Now, I'm not gonna use any fancy terminology for that, but essentially what they're doing here is they're trying to make the wheel look bigger than it actually is. To do that, there's a couple things that you can do. You can add concavity, you can try to put some sort of different paint behind the spokes to make it have a shadow, to kind of make it look like it has more concavity. But what Volk did is they essentially just put this nice little taper behind the spoke, and instead of putting any of the information typically right here, which would be on the lip for a lot of wheels, they've actually hidden it in between the windows of the spoke. So here you've got Volk Racing NE24, you've got Ray's Engineering, your JWL VIA, and of course the most important thing if you want to flex on the internet, the good old made in Japan and the forged. Now here's the thing that makes this wheel kind of interesting, and I want to make sure I get this right. If you look at that top spoke right here, you're gonna notice that it doesn't align with this bottom spoke right there. If you look to this spoke in here, you're gonna notice that it doesn't line up with this spoke down here. It goes over and over and over and over. The spokes are not symmetrical to the opposite side of the wheel. The windows themselves have a small and larger opening, but the actual spokes themselves are offset. The offset on these spokes is probably about a centimeter, centimeter and a half, but it's just enough to make your brain kind of get a little fuzzy in the back and make you want to scratch it, because it shouldn't be like that. It should be straight up and down, straight locked in, and perfect, symmetrical, as all things should be. And that, my friends, is the weird thing with the NE24. You might be asking, well, why did Volk do that? Well, Volk has tons of history in terms of their racing lineage, and what they wanted to do is they wanted to introduce a wheel where they could try to get a greater load rating out of a wheel, specifically for some of the heavier cars and some of the normal stuff coming out to market, without necessarily adding more weight. As you go up in load rating, especially, when you talk about load rating, especially with Tesla vehicles and things like that, wheels get very heavy very quickly. Same thing with tires. And so what they decided to do is they decided to release a design that still had this like almost lateral force absorption needed without having the added weight of developing a more traditionally styled spoke wheel. And so what ended up happening is, what they're saying is that, hey, listen, it doesn't need to be symmetrical, because as the force comes through this spoke here and this spoke here, it's gonna come and it's gonna travel through the hub, and it's gonna travel through one spoke on the opposite side. If something's coming in and there's an impact on this side, that force is gonna come through and it's gonna shoot off to this single spoke on the other side. They call it a Y-spoke design. Whether or not that is something that is gonna bother you, you need to make that decision, because once you spend about $4,000, you are kind of locked into what I would call is an asymmetrical wheel. It's very interesting and it's very, very cool. Now this is a fully forged wheel, which is pretty neat. And of course, if you look at the center of the wheel, you're gonna notice that there is an absolute crap ton of material. All of the material and a lot of the weight is right here at the center of the wheel. Obviously, that's gonna help with rotational mass, and that's gonna help keep strength where it needs to. You'll notice that the spokes get very, very thin in the center, and they get really, really fat at the end. Again, this is something that's gonna help with the strength of the wheel. There's a couple things I noticed that were a little interesting for me. And I think the biggest thing is that this actually carries a little bit of what you would see those very heavy-faced center lock style, almost only motorsport raise wheels. You can kind of see it in how the spoke flanges out or tapers out here, and it's very, very flat. It gives it a very different look than what I would typically be used to. A lot of the wheels that I see, particularly Advans, Rays, Graham-Lights, things like that, this spoke shoots down and then comes back up. And there's usually a little bit more design element that comes right here. And this wheel doesn't have it. So you actually get this very modest kind of outer lip that doesn't have a whole lot going on it. All the stuff that you'd want to have on this lip is actually hiding behind the spokes. So if you're wondering about sizes, I've already mentioned it, but it only comes in 18-inch or 19-inch. For the 18-inch sizes, you're gonna have widths from 8.5 inches wide to 12 inches wide. Offsets are gonna vary from +15 to +45. And bolt patterns, the 5-lug folks can rejoice because it's gonna be coming in a 5x100, 5x112, 5x114.3, and 5x120. Pretty much covering all of your standard options for an 18-inch wheel. For the 19s though, you're gonna see the width kind of come in a little bit. 8 inches wide up to an 11-inch wide wheel. For the offset, you're gonna see a +15 all the way up to a +52, +55, depending on availability. And the bolt patterns are gonna remain relatively the same. In terms of what kind of fitments are built around this wheel, you're really gonna see that Volk Racing focused on the Toyota GR Supra, the FK8 and FL5 Type R, the BMW M2, the F87 generation, Audi A4, TT, Volkswagen Golf, R32, Z4, Fairlady, Evo 10, GR Yaris, ISF, and RCF, and then of course the S15 Silvia. That's really where they started with this wheel, and they've expanded on fitments as the popularity has grown. Finishes here, you're gonna be looking at two options, and both are very, very subtle. You have essentially a matte gun black, and then also a shining black metal. So black or dark gray are gonna be your two colors that you have as an option for this wheel. You're also gonna see, in terms of what sort of profile you see here, you have 5 different sort of concavities that are gonna be provided to you based on the width and the offset of the wheel. You have to remember that with forged wheels, you get a little bit more freedom on making things more concave or less concave. For us, we're going to be pretty much happy with anything Volk provides because the amount of molds that they make for their wheels is usually pretty extensive, so you don't really have to worry about you feeling like you're getting cut out of a good deal because they just added a bunch of metal to the back pad to get the offset that you want. Speaking of back pad, you're gonna see that it has lots of beautiful little cutouts right here. This is all to save weight. We know this, but I'm gonna tell you anyway. Some of the gripes that I've seen on the internet is, what the heck, Alex? This is a $4,300 wheel, dude. Why is this really pretty? But if I look to the side, number one, it's got no bead knurling, and number two, you actually see that they stop with the gloss about 20%, 15% into the wheel here. What the heck, dude? What's going on? Well, first things first, that's not happening on the inside of the wheel. It's only happening right here. At the end of the day, it comes down to two things. Number one, the bead knurling is not a feature on this wheel. Why it's not a feature on this wheel, I'm not entirely sure. I think what a lot of people might say is that because of the design of the wheel and because of the fact that it's gonna have a lot of strong torsional rigidity, it doesn't need it. I don't know if that's really the case. I just don't think Volk Racing chose to put it on this wheel. Why? I think it's up to anybody's guess. I don't think it's to cut costs. I think it might just be because they didn't want to on this one. They may not see it at the same level of racing pedigree as some of their other lines, such as a TE37. However, that's anyone's guess. Number two, with the paint fading off halfway through the lip, that is a completely, with the paint fading off here on the barrel, that is an intentional thing. Volk has done this for a long time, at least 10 to 15 years now. This is just a natural part of their process. Number one, you're not gonna see it. And number two, why would you want a high gloss surface on your bead seat for your tire? Because this is over here and it's gonna feature a little bit more of a matte finish, a lot of people would typically say, hey, let's make this kind of as grippy as we possibly can. We don't need to paint it because we're not gonna see it once the tire's actually on the wheel. Those are two big things that I think are important, especially when you talk about buying a near $4,500 wheel, which, by the way, that means we get to talk about the center caps that came in with this order. So here's something, a little bit of a fun fact for you. The NE24 doesn't actually have at least at the time of this video, it doesn't actually have a center cap built exclusively for it. This is the center cap for a TE37. What we did is we confirmed fitment with this wheel and this hub bore with this center cap part number so that the customer could actually have center caps with his wheels. And I am going to safely and try to appropriately put this in without getting yelled at. So again, this is a TE37 center cap on the Volk NE24. And this was because the customer requested it. They wanted to have something on there. And I think for all intents and purposes, I think it looks good. And it gives it a nice little pop of a differential color in the center there, still giving it a very OE look. Now obviously Volk Racing company's been around for a long time. I don't need to tell you that this design is definitely an original design in our wheel verifier tool, which is only available at martiniworks.com. If that matters for you, that's very important. And of course the construction of this is a one-piece forged wheel. I could see this thing on an M2 or a new Z all day, as well as a Corolla or a Yaris. I think where you really have to get a little bit particular is just making sure you understand that this wheel is in fact not perfectly symmetrical. With that being said, 3 things I like and 2 things that I may not be a huge fan of. Number 1 thing I like, it's different. I think a lot of people have gotten so accustomed to buying the very same thing every single day, and I think if their friend has it, you need to buy it, and I think the NE24 is a giant middle finger to that concept. I think this is a killer wheel. It's gonna look awesome on an Audi. Number 2, I think Volk Racing has done an incredible job with their wheels, and I'm so excited to continue seeing that support in weird ways. There's fun design elements to this wheel. It features different kind of tapering and cut-ins to give it a little bit of that concavity. It's not naturally a very concave wheel by the specs, but it looks really good. I love the attention to detail that these guys put with their wheels every single day. I love the fact that you get that nice, sleek, forged kind of cutout on that hidden little lip that's hiding back there. And the third biggest thing that I love about it are the fitment ranges. Forged monoblocks are tough. You got to get that fitment perfect, and I think they're snagging the right cars for this. Now, like I said, this is going on an RS5 Sportback. I think it's going to look absolutely insane. If you guys out there, all 6 of you that own one, need a set of NE24s, get it from martiniworks.com. Let's weigh this bad boy and make sure we are all good to go. 20.9 is what I am seeing on this wheel right now, which is pretty darn good. Now, that is coming in at a pretty good weight. The shiny black metal, in my opinion, is probably one of my favorite finishes. And if I'm taking a look right here, you get all of the lovely stampings and stickers on the back here. What you're gonna notice though is that this has a weight or load rating of 700 kilograms. Most of the time you'd see something at the 690, 670, or even 620. And so to see this at a 700 kilogram load rating is why it's gonna weigh just a touch more. But again, I think Volk Racing is trying to make it good for some of those heavier vehicles that are coming to market soon. Now, I may have talked about what I loved about the wheel, but what are 2 things that I may not be a massive fan of? I think first things first, you're spending quite a bit of money. I would have really loved to see center caps, Volk Racing. Come on. I don't know why it's such a big deal for me. I just think it is. I think the center caps are a huge portion of this. Maybe I just sound like a broken record. But the second thing that I'm not a super big fan of is I really would have loved to see the bead knurling on this wheel. I think for the price point, the intention of the wheel, the heritage that they're using to justify the price and how they released it and the fitments, I would have really liked to see bead knurling being featured on this so that you could really feel confident that you weren't buying a wheel that was only exclusive to looking like a race wheel. It was actually truly a race wheel. Besides that, I think this is an absolutely killer wheel. I give this thing a 9.5 out of 10. I love that it's different. And of course, it got that little funky little feature of not being completely symmetrical. You guys and gals will have to let us know what you think of these wheels below in the comments. And of course, if you're looking for a set of aftermarket wheels, tires, wheel and tire packaging, performance parts for your car, you can get it over at martiniworks.com. I'm Alex, alex.martini with 2 underscores on Instagram. We'll see you on the next one. Adios.